Hi, and welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Carmen McGuinness, and on this channel we discuss relationships of all sorts, including the relationship that we have with ourselves, which I call the primary relationship. So my topic today is safe haven and secure base. These are two terms that were originally proposed and described by John Bowlby, an attachment theorist. And you should watch this video if you are currently raising a child of any age, if you have regrets or concerns about how your adult child was raised, or you aren't certain if your adult child has issues pertaining to these two conditions. If you are concerned for yourself and that perhaps you were not raised with a safe haven and secure base, or if you have been or are currently involved with someone that you're concerned wasn't raised with these two conditions, and in particular if you have fallen into a pattern of attracting people that may have not been raised with a secure base and a safe haven. So we're going to take each of these two terms in turn as we proceed through this. So safe haven refers to the infant's warmth, comfort, and a sense that he or she is loved and safe. His caregiver will nurture him, feed him, keep him warm and dry, and will show love just because he is treasured, not always just because they need it or there's something going on in the environment, but very often, quite often, many times a day, just because the child is treasured. And very importantly, his caregiver will soothe him when he is distraught. The importance of this cannot be understated. We humans learn to calm ourselves, to self-soothe or self-regulate by how our parents soothed us. If any of you has ever known, and I think we all have, someone who really cannot calm down, someone that cannot regulate their own emotions, whenever anything is slightly off kilter, they just really don't do well. These are people who may be suffering from this sort of challenge. The ways in which we can go wrong in childhood are many. Drive-by parenting is the one that comes to mind first. Drive-by parenting is when we have very little eye contact with the child, no real connection with the child. We are dealing with all of their needs, but it's very much of a drive-by thing. Now, we live in a real world. Conditions are changing all the time. There are many of us, I myself went through some of this. I did multiple graduate degrees when my youngest children were young, and it can really be a challenge to not do the drive-by, to actually stop to spend time with them and to let them know that they are connected with. So drive-by parenting is very common these days, and it can really be a challenge. We're all busy. Some of us are working 2 and 3 jobs. So, and even parents who are working from home can allow their children to fall victim to this, where we feel like we're spending a lot of time with our kids because we are working from home, but in fact we're really just parenting them between contact with our computer or our phone. So drive-by parenting is definitely a hazard. Delayed gratification is another way that parents can go wrong, with no assurance that help is on the way. So this can lead to a behavior chain. What we mean by this is the child starts to escalate. You might briefly say, I'll be there in a minute, or dinner will be ready in a minute. And the chain that can evolve from this is that the child has to escalate quite high before he or she actually gets the attention that is required. So this becomes a pattern of behaviors. And I should explain, that kind of behavior chain can evolve in other ways too. It's not just when the parent is delaying the child's gratification. So care is really all about the parent, not the child. This is another way that things can go horribly wrong. This is the parent who really is insecure about him or herself. And the child is really not anything more than an extension of their own personality. So this parent, if the child has a challenge at school, for instance, this parent will react because it makes the parent feel insecure about themselves, not because they're actually advocating for their child. So this is definitely a danger. And then parentification is another way that parents can go wrong. This is when a sibling is actually caring for the child, or the child learns to care for him or herself rather than the parent taking care of them at far too early of an age. And this last one leads to an avoidant attachment. Actually, the last two can lead to an avoidant attachment. The child learns that they don't really need anyone, and of course they don't, because their parents aren't actually taking care of them. Their parents are either taking care of themselves, or they're getting a sibling to take care of the child. So these individuals are at a higher risk of developing narcissism or antisocial personality disorder. Some of the others can lead to an insecure attachment with excessive anxiety. Some of the ones I discussed first. So Robert Firestone proposed and detailed what he called the fantasy bond relationship. And this is where the child imagines that the parent is actually caring for him, that he or she has a normal, healthy relationship with the parent. And these kids can appear to be quite calm because they have this fantasy running in their head. They may even self-soothe by talking about their life to themselves. As you can well imagine, this insecure attachment repeats itself in adult relationships with daydreaming and imagined or embellished attachment to romantic partners as the individual matures and steps into adulthood. The disorganized attachment style results when the child is actually abused, either physically or emotionally. So there you go. That's safe haven. We've addressed the first half of this talk. Secure base refers to the stage in which the child is beginning to explore the world around him. Now, I want to be clear that during safe haven, the child should still have a secure base. There should still be parental nurturing and parental love and connection. But safe haven is when they start to go out into the environment, and this can start as early as crawling around, and they need to feel that someone is looking out for them, that there's a safe haven to come back to, a secure base to come back to. So a good balance depends upon just the right amount of hoovering, the right distance or proximity, and the right amount of time between verbal assurances. Mommy's right here, it's okay, you can play over there, I'm over here, that sort of thing when they're in the park. All age dependent, of course. This changes dramatically as the child matures. So there are a few mistakes that parents commonly make in regard to secure base, and I want to go through them. Not allowing any exploration of the environment can lead to fear, obviously. It's just not okay to keep your child in the house just because the world is not a safe place. You have to monitor. And often we do see, sadly, the parents who do not allow their children to explore the world can be those parents who actually are being selfish about this. It's not always just that they don't want their child hurt. It can be that they don't want to go outside. They don't want to have to be monitoring them. So this is clearly a problem. Scolding rather than briefly explaining and redirecting when the child is too far or in a dangerous situation, too high up a tree, for instance, can lead to a sense of shame. So avoid scolding your child. Instead, you should be explaining what the problem is briefly, very briefly, and then redirecting them. And again, I'm talking not just to parents, but also to those of us who have been raised. If you feel that you were raised in an environment where you were shamed rather than allowed to explore and have someone explain when you got too far afield, then this certainly pertains to you. These things that I just mentioned, those two, can lead to an insecure attachment. Whereas allowing exploration without monitoring can lead to an avoidant attachment, narcissism, or antisocial personality disorder. So this is when you just let the child go out in the world and you hope for the best. Physical punishment as a result of monitoring can lead to insecure attachment, or more troublingly, a sort of an interrupted attachment, disorganized attachment, an attachment that is not clear. It teaches the child that we love by hurting. That's how we show love. And this leads to disorganized thinking as to attachment. Another mistake is to disregard age appropriateness. Don't let your 14-year-old date, for instance, but don't expect your 18-year-old not to date and not to kiss her boyfriend, because it's going to happen. So be real. And this brings us to another mistake. Many parents stop oversight of their children far too early. An 18-year-old does need monitoring, and your monitoring will be perceived as loving her or him, as long as it's reasonable monitoring. All of us need looking after, and we enjoy being looked after. It's part of life, having that connection with others. Who doesn't want to be loved in that particular way? Of course, there are boundaries that have to be respected, and this is the last mistake that I'm going to address here this afternoon. We teach our children to have boundaries by helping them establish boundaries, and then by respecting those boundaries. So my 18-year-old, for instance, just turned 18, she's just barely 18, has a car, a phone, and a budget to work with. But if she abuses these, her boundaries change. They are tightened. She might have to give up her phone. I might actually have to look at those messages if there's any kind of a problem. So there's quite a lot of information for you. And as always, if you require more, you're more than welcome to either write to me or contact me through my office and or my website. I would be happy to talk and help you get into a better situation in your world. So with that said, I wish you a wonderful day. I hope it is sunnier where you are than where I am. We've had rain all day here in Orlando. I've been kind of excited though, because I just recently had new gutters installed with rain chains. And if you have not seen them before, they're just amazing. They make a lovely little sound and the rain trickles down through them instead of using a gutter. So I'm going to put up a link here for you to see that, because I just think it's so special and relaxing, and I would just love it if all the world had rain chains instead of gutters. So I'm going to put up a little link to something that I recorded earlier. I'll actually just connect it to the end of the video. So I hope you enjoy that, and I will see you midweek for my midweek sneak peek. I have a topic in mind already, something that came up this week that I think is going to make a good presentation. So I will see you then, and of course I'll see you next Sunday for my Sunday segment. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you for tuning in. See you soon.